What do you get when you take magical girls, mechs, furries, cyberpunk, Alice in Wonderland, horror, Freudian theory, Yuri, and mix it all together? Somehow, a cohesive anime. The 2017 anime original Flip Flappers is a frankly insane collection of ideas I'm both mystified and incredibly grateful made it to screen. Following two girls' adventures into an alternate dimension known as Pure Illusion, it's about many things. But one that always stuck with me is its endless creative energy. As messy as it may sound, it's impeccable how well the series weaves its ideas together, showcasing what this medium can be capable of in the process. But as engaging and fun as that is, this isn't just an exercise in how many ideas we can throw at a wall and still make them stick. At its core, Flip Flappers is about the creative. It's about our individual experiences with the world, how they manifest in our heads, the ways in which we choose to express them, and what can happen when that is restricted. Before we dive any further into this odd world, you can see it for yourself streaming now over on HiDive, both subbed and dubbed. HiDive has an incredible backlog of shows from exclusive classics like Pat Labor and Legend of the Galactic Heroes to the best of recent years like Land of the Lustrous and Bloom Into You, as well as currently airing shows and even dubcasts. They're doing a promotion for a free 30-day trial if you sign up now at hidive.com. That's all these anime across your devices for free. Should be more than enough to get through a quarantine. And while you're there, give Flip Flappers a watch. Even if you've already seen it, trust me, it's worth the second viewing. Flip Flappers starts like so many coming-of-age stories before it. Our ordinary protagonist Kokona drifting through the drab throes of normalcy. It opens on her taking a mock exam, pushing towards a future with the same excitement as the dull gray walls of the classroom. Alarms blare as we suddenly cut to Genki girl Papika, racing through tunnels before bursting into the night sky. The commotion catches Kokona's attention off in the distance, before she's drawn back to the class. Papika, meanwhile, charges towards the city, dazzled by bright lights ahead. The cold open establishes the series' driving force. Papika's hunger for adventure in contrast to Kokona's listlessness. Kokona is overcome with uncertainty. She leaves her career questionnaire blank, not knowing what sort of future she wants. She has a recurring dream where she finds herself lazily floating down a hazy river, a blank expression across her face. Flip Flappers repeatedly comes back to this sequence as it captures Kokona's aimlessness. It's a modern spin on Alice in Wonderland, with Papika playing the role of the rabbit, pulling Kokona out of this all-too-familiar malaise and into a fantastical world where nothing makes sense. Hell, the second episode has them quite literally chasing a rabbit down a hole. Initially resistant to the call to adventure, Kokona eventually begins to open up, admiring Papika's free spirit and yearning to explore new worlds together. Flip Flappers champions self-expression and creative freedom, encouraging its characters to seek out new experiences. There's an insane level of world building on display. Just think of all the styles represented here, from a Mad Max wasteland to a futuristic cyber city that looks straight out of Tron. Each one of these colorful locales could tell a story to fill an entire show on its own, but just as soon as we land in it, it's off to the next, as nearly every episode brings another world to traverse. Taken together, the series bursts with creative life. It never allows that initial excitement of realizing a new artistic idea to wear off. That energy feeds from the setting to the characters. Whether the villain be their own apathy or something a bit more tangible, those who let themselves be guided by their imaginative drive always come out better for it, while those who attempt to restrict and control it eventually lose. The worlds of Pure Illusion, Flip Flappers' version of Wonderland, are said to run parallel to reality, connected somewhere by the subconscious minds of people. Director Oshiyama said he wanted to explore the multifaceted nature of the internal world we each have. In that way, Pure Illusion represents our innermost thoughts, our memories, desires, fears, and yes, our imagination. Fitting, the series constantly conjures imagery reflecting classic children's stories. After all, what's more unfettered than the mind of a child? On top of the obvious allegories, even the show's ED carries this motif, with a scrolling portrait of Kokona and Papika wandering through classic fairy tales. Childhood is when you're allowed to let your imagination run free, which is the essence of Pure Illusion, a build-your-own-adventure kit with no limits. But as you grow up, there's this expectation to conform, to let go of these impulses. What was once seen as enriching to the development of a child is now deemed no longer useful to an adult. Kokona straddles that line of adolescence between moving toward her future and leaving her youth behind. She's no longer supposed to be thinking about whimsical adventures, rather how she can contribute to society, a career. Creative professions are often discouraged, seen as not a real job. The essence of Flip Flappers is celebrating that unbound imagination of youth. In that way, Paprika represents its core message. Director Kiyotaka Oshiyama described the former like so. Paprika is in some ways an ideal figure, the magnificence of innocence, maybe you'd call it. A girl with her genuineness, honesty, purity, it's just nice. I don't want to forget that authenticity even after becoming an adult. I want to think there's value in that. On the flip side, the antagonists seek to silence it, most often represented by authority figures throughout the series, particularly parents. Kokona isn't alone in her dream. Each time a figure tells her, "Welcome home."
あなたはおかえり
The empty scene represents the restraints enforced on her by her mother, whose efforts to protect her eventually lead her trying to control every aspect of Kokona's life. This is the world she's carefully crafted for her. Flip Flappers' parental figures consistently try to push their children away from self-expression. Take Iro, for instance. From a young age, she uses art as an escape from her grim home life. Her parents shame her into thinking her art should be hidden. They call it weird and tell her to draw like all the other kids. The influence an adult's word carries in the eyes of a child is on full display here. Iro has internalized this idea that she shouldn't openly express herself. That changes, however, when her grandmother shows genuine interest in her drawings. Iro excitedly confides in the one person who encourages her creative spirit. Sometimes, that's all it takes to inspire. When that is allowed to flourish, she's at her happiest and most fulfilled. It becomes a safe space for her, free from the oppressive nature of her home environment, represented by the split world. Kokona experiences the warmth of the grandmother's home, bathed in golden light, while Paprika is trapped by Iro's toxic parents, here cast in cold blues. What some call weird, her grandmother celebrates as Iro's individuality, something the show's antagonists try to destroy. From Iro's parents to Kokona's mother. One character even seeks to completely break down the bridge between pure illusion and reality, trying to turn these individual worlds into a collective experience.
それに大丈夫よもう何も心配しなくていいのお母さん私が全部してあげるから
Mimi initially wants what's best for Kokona, but in doing so, doesn't let Kokona lead her own life. She tries to force her into a path free from pain and failure, but sacrifices her individuality in the process. Part of living is learning to use that as a means to grow. Nothing is more important than living the life you want to lead.
1, 2, 3, 4
Ultimately, that's what Flip Flappers is all about. Choosing your own adventure. Whatever that may be, you decide how to express yourself because you're the only one who can. In a meta sort of way, the nature of the show itself is its biggest testament to the power of creative freedom. It feels like a miracle this series exists in the first place. Anime original properties are rare in the industry these days, especially those with no other tie-ins, unlike the recent multimedia franchises of Bushiroad, for instance. It's just a risky investment from the eyes of a production committee to pour funding into a brand new work with no established track record. Sometimes, even when original properties do get greenlit, they can have the rug pulled out from under them by corporate financiers cutting costs, as was the case with 2019's Stars Align. But there's a certain allure to creating original works, one Studio 3Hz and director Oshiyama had a shared interest in. You might think it easier for a creator with a well-established name to use that cachet to get original IPs funded. But nearly all of Oshiyama's prior work came as an animator, as terrific as it was. His only prior direction credit came on his enrapturing episode of Space Dandy Season 2, where he managed to craft one of the most stylistically memorable outings in a series where that was the main conceit. Add in the wild concept of a Yuri magical girl series balancing fairy tales, giant robots, and themes baked in psychoanalytic theory, and I'm starting to think the planets must have aligned on some perfect access to allow this series to happen. Citing the risky nature of the series' ideas from a business perspective, Oshiyama himself said he took the mindset of, hey, I'm still young, and if I screw up this director thing, I can still make a living as an animator. However, Flip Flappers works because it's an original. How better to showcase the series' ideas of individuality and imaginative expression than a production whose only creative limits are what they could reasonably bring to life themselves? Even the experience of the show from a viewer's perspective is intentionally open to interpretation, as Oshiyama said it was important to him to allow those interested in theory and the show's more psychological elements, and those who just want a fun time, to both get something out of the series. Flip Flappers is the creative vision of every person on staff brought to life. When asked if he felt there was any episode in particular he really left his mark on, Oshiyama said, "Every one." In this series about letting go of creative restraints and finding the freedom to express yourself, the heroes are the ones who choose their own adventure. So then, what world do you want to see?